Hello and welcome. This is Gabby, and today I'm going to be sharing a simple watercolor technique for card making. This is a technique I use quite a lot when I am making cards and using watercolor, and it's one that gives your work a really lovely ethereal look, depending of course on what colors etc you use. So I'm going to give you a sample of how to actually do it today. A number of people have asked me to share this, so that's why I am doing it. Now, I do also have a blog post article on my website, gabbyscardcreations.com.au, which summarizes the technique that I actually use. For those of you who like to sort of read what the process is, you can go to the blog post and do that. Otherwise, just follow me here. So this is going to be a bit of a longer video. I'm not actually making a finished card here. I'm just going to be showing you the technique that I use for actually painting, if you like, the background image that I'm going to use on the card, and then afterwards I decide on whether I want to use only part of the image, whether I want to die cut the image or fussy cut it if there aren't any dies, or whether I want to use the whole panel, whether I want to make a square card or a normal size card or a slimline card or whatever. So I don't necessarily do all of that in one day. I usually will do the painting, put it aside, and then decide what I want to do with it on another day. Okay, so let's get started. You'll see here that I have a piece of a watercolor paper on a board, and I have actually taped it down. This is because I'm going to put quite a lot of water on the actual paper, and the watercolor paper can take it. It's a hot pressed watercolor paper, 300 GSM, so it's quite a thick paper, but it's smooth. When I do my fine art paintings, I like using cold pressed or rough paper, which has more tooth to it and gives me more texture. But when I'm doing this technique with cards, I actually like to just use the smooth paper. Now, I've taped it down with white painter's tape. I know a lot of people will use blue painter's tape, but I like using white, especially when I'm doing my fine art paintings, but even when I'm doing my card making, because it doesn't alter my perception of things or my perspective. Sometimes the blue painter's tape gives me a different sort of overall impression of what the piece looks like. So I prefer working with just the white painter's tape. And I just get this one from my local hardware store. Okay, so let's get started. So these are the paints that I'm going to be using. This is my paint palette at the moment. I use mainly Daniel Smith watercolor paints because I absolutely love them. However, there are many other really good quality, excellent quality paints out there, but I do like Daniel Smith. This particular one here, I don't know if you can see the name, it's called Australian Grey. That is an Art Spectrum color, and it's called Australian Grey, but it's not grey at all. But I like using it for when I'm painting Australian eucalypts, for the barks and things like that. So that is my colour palette at the moment. So I have 14 colours in there. When I started out watercolouring, I only had a few colours, and then I went overboard and had heaps and heaps of colours, but now I'm actually toning my colours back down again and not using as many. And it's even when I'm doing some fine art work, but also when I'm doing my card painting, I limit myself to only a few colours. You know, I don't go all out and say, oh, I'm going to use 12 colours on this particular painting. I just limit myself to a few. Okay, so that is my palette, and I'm going to mix in my wells. Now, the brushes I'm going to use, first up, I am using this brush just to get a nice even spread of water on the whole of the panel. This one is a Da Vinci Spin size 30, and it's a nice brush to quickly go across the actual page that you're working with. Other than that, I tend to use synthetic brushes, which are not as expensive as non-synthetic brushes, and I particularly like this brand, which is Black Velvet by the Silver Brush Company, and this is a size 12, which I'm going to be using today. And then when I actually get into details, I may use a size 2 depending on the the actual amount of detail I need to get, or a size 4. So that's what I'm going to be using today. I've also got a size 8 in this range as well, which I use quite a lot of. Now I have 2 little pots of water here. One of them I decided to show it to you because it's already all, discoloured with pink. Well, with red, but it's sort of made of pink. And the reason I wanted to show that to you is that sometimes I will paint with the dirty water, depending on what colours I'm needing and what colours are in the water. Sometimes I want just a light background. So if I wanted just a really soft pink in the background, I could actually use that water and just paint straight from there. But I'm not. I'm using that as my my water container to clean out my brush, or most of the paint from the brush, before I then put it into the clean water. And I also do have generally a cloth, a microfiber cloth with me, and I'll just go and get it. And it's just an ordinary, well, this one's the Simon Says stamp one, but you can get any microfiber cloth, and I just have that there if I want to get rid of some of the water that's on my brush. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm doing the background now, and I'm going to turn this around so you're not necessarily going to see everything all at once, but that's okay. You get the gist of it. Now, the reason I start with a background, because some people have said to me, with this technique, what I do is I do a background and then I stamp and emboss an image. And people go, why don't you stamp and emboss the image first and then paint? Well, the reason I do it this way is, there's 2 reasons I do it this way. The first is that once I've painted, I want to dry the paint. And if I've got my image already stamped and embossed, I run the risk of reheating the embossing powder and then it goes flat. Now, I could get away with that by just letting the whole piece dry naturally, but then that takes a long time. So you know, if I want to use a heat tool for drying something quickly, then I will do the painting first, okay, and then I stamp my image. The second reason, though, is also very, very important, and that is, while I want to retain a little bit of control, the beauty about watercolor, and if you're a real control freak, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, but if you like to maintain control when you're coloring, then watercolor probably isn't for you, because the beauty about watercolor, a lot of it is to let it do its thing. And so you have to relinquish a little bit of control. You might not necessarily end up with what you thought in your mind initially you were going to end up with. And so I do it this way. So I have a rough idea of where I'm going to put colors, of where the stamp will be, but not exactly. So the colors will do what the colors will do. Okay, so what I'm going to do first up is I'm going to paint or put some water on this whole piece. And you want to be quite generous with this, because you want this to be wet, because you want the paint to travel. So I've wet the paper quite generously. Yep. And now I'm going to start putting color in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix. You're not going to see me mix, and that's fine, because I'm only filming with my mobile phone here, and so I can't get everything in. But you're going to see me mix. You're not going to see me mix a color, but I will be talking you through me mixing a color. So I'm mixing a cool red color with a warm orange. That's what I'm doing. And then I'm just going to place it on. Now you see, I'm not doing anything too drastic here. I'm just painting this on where I think it should go. And it's very watery. And that's fine. It can be very watery. Right, now I'm going to go in with quite a watery blue. Okay, now I'm mixing it, I'm putting it right next to the red, and that's fine because red and blue gives you purple. Okay, and that's absolutely fine to have that. And I'm just putting it in different places. Like I said, I know roughly where the image is going to go, and you can see it's already starting to travel, and the colors are starting to mix. And at the moment you might think, oh, I don't really like that, and that's fine. It's actually looking a bit different to the last one I did, and that's another thing, you can never replicate here. Now if you want to, you'll see I've got some what we call hard edges along here. If you want to soften them, you can, while the paper's still wet, you can soften with your brush, or you can use a baby wipe, a damp baby wipe, and you can sort of soften this way, which is a nice way to soften. Baby wipes are a really good tool to have in the art studio. So I've softened that way. Right, and now I'm going to add a green. So going to be interesting now, because we've got to be careful how we mix our greens in line with those other colours that I'm using. So I'm putting the greens around the place, and you'll see that, and I'll fix it in a minute, but you'll see that the greens in here, as they're going towards the red, are making like a sort of almost like a mustardy colour here and a darker colour there. And in this case, I don't actually mind it. You'll also see that I'm using two different greens. You'll see I've mixed two different greens, and one of the greens is more granulated than the other. So you can see it starting to, you know, do its thing here. And that's the nice thing that you want to see. So, you know, that's really good. So I'm just softening up edges again. Here I might soften up just by adding some water. Okay, and I'm creating little blooms here. Now, generally in fine art, people will say with watercolor, oh, you don't want blooms. And the reason you get these, they're these little lighter sort of shades within, or lighter shades or tones within the blends. And that's because I'm using a different, I can't say thickness, but a different strength of paint there. All right, if you start with a particular strength of paint and then you water it down and add some more, you'll get these little blooms. If you go thicker, you won't. But, you know, that's basically how it ends up. So essentially, that is what I do. That is the first thing to do. And you can then, you'll see that the paper has actually, I don't know if you can see it on here, but the paper has actually warped a little bit. It's puckered up, and that's because it's so wet. As it dries, that will go down. Okay. Now, I can speed up the drying process by using a heat tool on this now and drying it until it's all gone flat. Again, the paper's gone flat again. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just let it dry naturally because it's still doing its thing. The watercolor is still spreading. It's still doing its thing. If I wanted it to spread even more, I could actually put it on an angle and dry it on an angle, but I won't. I'm going to dry it flat, but it's still moving around. And what these greens are doing, it's really nice. So it's still moving around. So I'm going to let that dry naturally. Okay, but as in all good cooks, there's one I've prepared earlier. So I shall put this one aside to dry and then bring in the one that I did yesterday, in fact. And here it is. Actually, if I turn it around this way, you'll see. Now, this is fully dry. Also be aware that when you are painting with watercolors, they will dry about 30% lighter than what you've put down. And for this particular look, I want it to be light. I want the background to be light. But you'll see that this one turned out a little bit differently. You know, you just cannot replicate them fully. So this one has turned out differently. So I then stamped the stamp. Well, what I did was initially I used an anti-static powder tool on the actual watercolor paper because embossing powder loves sticking to watercolor paper. So I used a quite generous amount of the anti-static powder tool over the watercolor paper. Then I stamped the image in an embossing ink, and then I used some gold embossing powder over the top of it, and then heat set that until that was nice and smooth. And I've generally got the stamped image where I want it to be, but you know, it doesn't really matter. You'll see I've got some of the petals here in the sort of the yellowy green, and that's fine. So what you do now is, now I'm going to add more color, but I'm going to add more intense color, and I'm going to work with the colors that are there. So for example, you know, if I worked this here, this particular flower, most of it's orange, but some of it's in this sort of the yellow green, and I'm going to keep that yellow green so I get tones in that. Some of the leaves are in the yellow green. Some of the leaves have got a little bit of orange in them. I'll work with that as well. You know, this doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a real flower color. This is, you know, a piece of art. So we're going to work on it like that. Now I'm going to use now my smaller brush, and because these leaves here or these petals here are quite large, I'm going to use my my number 4 brush. So we'll use that now. My husband just made me a cup of tea, so I'm just having a bit of that. Okay, so now I'm going to just mix a little bit thicker paint of what I've already used. And we'll see how it goes. And I might even go a darker shade. We'll just see. And you can start anywhere. Now I'm left-handed, so I usually start on the right-hand side and work my way down with a particular flower, but you can go however you want to. And what I do is I will put some thicker color at the bottom of a petal or the inside of the petal. Then I will just wet my brush, just sort of not fully dry it, but just dry it a little bit on my microfiber towel, and then work it out. And then I'm going to go in with some water so that it's darker in the middle, but I sort of just work it like that. Now, the good thing about the embossed image is that it gives you those little sections to work on. You know, and your paint will stay within that section. It's not going to go anywhere else. But that's going to work like that. And because you've got that background, you don't have to cover absolutely everything of that petal. I'm not, and that's the whole point of this. You want to get the different, you know, the different shades in there, and you want to get some dimension. That's the whole point about doing this. You want dimension in your flower. Now, this technique works best with florals, and it's really easy to use or to do. Now, you'll see here I've gone a little bit too light. I need to get a little bit more darkness here. We've got the different shades from the top of the petal to the rest of it, but I want to get a little bit more darkness in there, and I will do that in a minute. I'm just going to let that dry a little bit. I hope you can see this all right. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm actually in Albany in Western Australia. Yep, far away from a lot of the world. They say that Perth, our capital city in Western Australia, is the most isolated capital in the world because of where we're situated. Well, I'm about 5 hours drive south of our capital city on the Southern Ocean. Beautiful, beautiful place to live. But what I was going to say was that anyone who is in the Albany area, I am actually going to be doing a face-to-face class on this. So I'll be doing this class in person of teaching you how to do this technique. And if you happen to be here and want to see when that is on, just go onto my website, gabbyscardcreations.com.au, and you will find the details there. Now you can see I'm adding a little bit of depth, and that's just sort of, you know, up to you how much you decide to add there. And then I go in with some water and spread it again. It's a lovely technique, and it's actually very soothing working on this. It's not a quick technique though, so if you want to, you know, if you're looking at making a card in a hurry, this is not going to be the one for you, but it is a lovely technique to use. So this is, you know, this is how we'll go along with this. Now, I'm probably working a little bit faster than I normally would as well, and that's okay. Now here I'm actually colouring the whole of this side because it's the underside of that particular petal. And you see here I've got the shade here that's lighter than the rest, but I still had paint on my brush, so that's why I went that way. Now here on this petal I've got a little bit of blue, and I'm actually going to work with that because that's what makes it, I don't know, really cool. I like this technique because of that. And remember, orange and blue are complementary colors on your color wheel, so they will go together. But be careful when you mix, because they don't necessarily always mix that nicely. So I'm being very careful how I add this. Okay, got my baby wipe so I can wipe those bits off, because you can see it's traveling here and it's making a little bit of brown, but that's okay because it's a sort of a browny orange, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go a bit darker in here again, and I've just added that little bit of blue, and it just adds that, I don't know, that extra something to this. So I'm doing this in real time so that you can see how long it actually does take to do. you know, to give you a realistic sort of look at it. I probably won't do the whole thing, but it shows you, as I said, the technique. And this brush size was just the right size to do this. Now, as I rinse my brush, I then just dab it on my microfiber towel so that it's not full of, you know, water. Because I want the colour to spread, but not necessarily all over the place. Now this is where I've got that yellow, and I'm going to just come in with yellow and just bring that in. Now it'll be in other places as well. Now the yellow can quite happily mix with the red. That will mix nicely, but you can see here how this is happening. So this is a petal still that's not a leaf, it's a petal, and I'm going in. Oh, hang on, which yellow did I? Oh, I went in with the wrong yellow, but that's okay. I went in initially with a cool yellow, and I wanted to go in with the warm yellow, but that's okay. So now what I'm going to do is I've sort of wiped off my brush, and I'm going to take some of this colour off so it's not that heavy. Now, you might look at that and go, well, that looks a bit odd having that one petal that's yellow when everything else isn't. And that may be so, but what I'm going to do is I am going to add a little bit of the orange colour that I was working with. And even that is going to change a little bit because I'm mixing some more, and the mix might be different to the rest of it. So you see, I'm still getting that, but the mix, as I said, is different. And you can see I'm adding to other places as well. So now that I've added some orange to this particular petal, it doesn't look quite so out of place. It just looks like it's, you know, another one of those meant to be type colours on this particular flower. Okay, and this is a big one, so I put quite a bit on to start with. And you can see I'm just adding along as I go. And here I'm sort of not happy with the blend there a bit, so that's why I'm blending it out. And there we go. Add a bit more of the dark in there. It's always nice to have those dark contrasty bits, and sometimes I go even darker to get a real contrast in the middle. It depends what you sort of want. Now here again I'm going to go dark under here. So here again I'm colouring all of this, And then I'm going to go in with a slightly darker at the top here, under the little sort of fold over. Okay, still some more in there. So now as these other places have started to dry, I can just add a little bit more, because remember, as I said, the watercolors will dry 30% lighter than when you first paint them. So I'm just adding these little pieces, and then for some of them I'm just blending them out a little bit. Not a lot, just, this is all sort of, you know, trial and error. The thing with watercolor painting is that you really need to practice, and you need to practice every day. You know, if you're really, really into watercolors, I mean, if you're using watercoloring for cards, that's fine. But if you think, oh, I want to paint with watercolors, then, as I said, you need to practice a little bit every day, because watercoloring is the hardest painting medium, because if you muck it up, you can't fix it. You know, if you're painting with acrylic or with oils or even with pastels, you know, you actually go from the dark to the light and you put the light on top. But with watercolor, you go the opposite way. You start with light and then you go darker. So if you want anything that's white, you need to protect your white and not paint it. And sometimes that's really hard to do. And it's certainly hard to master. Yeah. But anyway, so how are we looking here? We're getting there, aren't we? As I said, this is going to be a bit of a longer video because I am doing it in real time. But I'm not going to do all of it. I'm just going to show you parts of it. Just going to finish this one rose. It looks like a rose to me anyway. And then we will work on a couple of the leaves. And this one needs a little something. So you'll see I'm just adding something there. Okay. All right. I'm liking how this is happening, or what's happening to it. You know, I do these quite often and they always turn out differently, but I deliberately choose different colorways as well. The last time I did something similar, I did it on an envelope and I used all blues, and it was really, really nice. I liked it. So, you know, that's what I did. Now, also what I tend to do when I make a card, when I'm doing this sort of thing. Now, you see here, you can see I've got some hard edges there and I want to soften those. So I just go in and soften them like that. And again, if I think, oh, I've gone too far up, I want a bit lighter, I can go in with my baby wipe. Yeah, so what I do when I finish the card, or, you know, or I finish the panel, should I say, not the card, is I like spattering it with some metallic paint. You know, so I might spatter this one with a gold paint, or I might have a metallic paint that's in a blue, and I might just spatter that on. So, yeah, so I tend to do a bit of that, and it just gives it, I don't know, more character, I guess, which I like. So yeah, okay, we're almost done with this particular flower. So, yeah. Now, I'll do this here. Go a bit darker there. All right, I'm going to add a little bit more to that afterwards, and obviously I'm going to finish this afterwards as well. So that, as I said, just shows you what the technique is like. Now I'm just going to do the blue flowers as well here. Now these blue flowers, because I've got that blue underneath where I want the blue flowers to be, I'm going to go a bit darker with my flowers. Now, I'm going to paint all of it blue. I don't know what flowers these are, so even this bottom bit, I'm going to paint blue, and that's fine. You know. Now here, I've just painted a little bit of them, and here just half. So. Now, because these are quite small, I could go down to my other brush, but I personally don't feel the need to. When you learn to watercolor, the best thing, or one of the tips I can give you, is to use the biggest brush you can control. Because it keeps you looser. You don't want to get tight with watercolor. That's the beauty of watercolor, is to keep it nice and loose. So you don't want to be tight with it. And so this will keep you nice and loose. And that's what you want. Now you'll see that came up quite light. The blues turned out quite light up there, but it's okay. I'm going to darken it. Now, if you want to see the finished card, I will post it once I've finished it. I'll actually post it on my blog, so you will be able to see it. Now here I'm using a different blue, and I'm just going in a bit darker, and the paper's still wet, so it will sort of blend and do its thing by itself. Sort of. There we go. Sometimes I've just got to make it travel a bit more. Yeah. Okay. So that gives it, just that little bit of darkness already gives it more depth, which is what we want, because that's what this technique's all about, is just giving the flowers or the image some depth, making it look 3D rather than 2D. And just by adding that little extra blue, you got more of that effect. And what I'll do is, we've just got little blue ones there. Then I'll just do that on. And we've got another one down here. Okay. Right, so let's just tackle some of the leaves. Now, I want leaves that are green, obviously, but we're going to work with the yellow as well. Now, here I've got green and yellow and blue. So I've used two different greens, and you've got some what we call granulation. You can see that happening here, and it's lovely. So here, whereas in the flower I used a warm yellow, in the leaves I'm going to use a cool yellow, except for this one here. So what we'll do here, oh, actually, no, I'll use a cool yellow all the way through. So I'm using a cool yellow here. But over the red orangey, it actually goes more warm shade. And then I'm going to go on with my green. Oops, a little over bit there. You can wipe it off. See, like I said, baby wipes are just so good. Okay, I'm going to let that go for the moment. Right, we'll go to these leaves here. So I'm on with the yellow here at the bottom. Yeah, we'll do it one at a time. Why not? Right, and now I'm going in with this green. So mix it up a little bit, let it do its thing. And then I'm not going right to the edge. Okay, so I've let the actual yellow sort of, you know, look out of the leaf, if you like. Lift some of that colour. There we go. Okay, now this one here, I will do a normal leaf colour. So you'll see that the leaves will vary in their colour. Oops, making a mess here now. There we go. Now here I've added this sort of blue-green, which is the green that I actually mixed here anyway. So it just gives that a little bit of a different look. And that's fine. So you'll see it will dry differently. And we will go here. And again, to highlight these leaves, although you don't want to highlight them too much because it's the rose that is the main thing there. And I've actually just got a little bit more rose to paint in here. So to highlight the rose, we don't want the leaves too highlighted, but we do want them to, you know, stand out a little bit. So I'm going to go a little bit of a darker green now, just on the inside a little bit. Now this is Cascade green. I love this green, but it is a granulating green as well. So we'll see what happens there. So you can see that when I'm using the greens, I'm using different shades of green. I'm not using just the same green. Now this one here, I don't know if I'm going to put some yellow in there. I'm not sure, but we'll just see. Right. Now, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go some darks in here. You know, these are these little nooks and crannies, and you want to have some darkness in there because there is some depth there. So I'm going to go a little bit here as well. And I'll put a little bit more colour here because it blends in too much with the background at the moment. But then I'll go a little bit darker in here again. That's it. Contrast is great in watercolour. It really gives depth to what it is that you're doing. And as I said, every time I clean my brush, I just tap it on my microfiber towel just to get it a little bit drier. Okay. Now these ones here, I'm going to add a little bit more green. And the fact that they're mixing with the orange, it gives more of an olivey green there, and that's fine. It can do that. That is exactly, you know, how this technique is supposed to work. Okay, so the flower is sort of virtually dry by now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some real dark bits. Well, what I think are real dark bits. A lot darker than what's there anyway, I would say. Let's add this. Now I'm just going to try something. If it doesn't work, I can get rid of it. But what I've done is I mixed my orangey colour, but I put a lot more red in it. And then I added green. And it came up with a colour that actually doesn't look very nice at all, but it works on this. Because it's given me that darkness that I need just for some of the bits. Not everywhere, but just some of the bits. And I'll show you the colour in a minute in a minute, because you'd look at it and go, ooh, I don't think I would have used that. But remember, red and green are opposite on the colour wheel, so they will mix well. And sometimes if you want a really dark red and you can't get it, because often it's hard to get a dark red and you can't get it, then it's good to actually go in with green, because that'll give you a nice dark one. And I can add more red to this after. If I think, oh no, it's a little bit too browny, I can go more red. That's not a problem. So, you know, I can do that. So you'll see I'm just adding them to some of the nooks and crannies. Don't have to add it everywhere, because then it looks like it's a bit unnatural. But in some of these areas, it looks really good. Now this, I'll go in with a little bit more red. And that actually worked better. Okay, I'm going to go in with more red, because it's starting to go a little bit too brown. So I'll go a little bit more red. that will give me what I want. I'm going in quite a lot on this petal, but that's okay. That's the sort of the look that I want on that one. And then I can always lighten it by going over with my baby wipe, which I just did. And I can still lift some more colour if I need to. There we go. Right, so we'll go a bit more here. And we'll do it in there. We'll do it in there. Do it in there and in there. Right. So we're almost done. Oh, and I'll put another bit in there. So you'll see that it's given it quite a lot of depth going in with this darker shade, which is what we like to do sometimes. You know, we want to have that lightened shade in our work. And I think it turned out quite successfully. But like I said, they're all different. And also some of you watching might not like this. You might think, I don't like those colours, and that's fine. You know, you do it in the colours that you really like, and it will work. You know, it will definitely work with the colours that you like. But the important thing is to do your light wash first. Either dry it with a heat tool if you can't wait to continue, or let it dry naturally. And if you let it dry naturally, I would say let it dry overnight. And then work on it, you know, with the same colours as I said before, but in a thicker mixture of the paint, a slightly thicker mixture of the paint, so that it becomes, you know, more pigmented. And then it will turn out beautifully. Okay, so I think we will leave it. No, I just want to fiddle all the time, don't I? I think we'll leave it at that. But this is basically the technique that I use. And as I said, I filmed this in real time, so you can see it is not a quick technique, but it's certainly rewarding. And the results, I think, are really lovely. So, you know, if you want to try it, I encourage you to do so. As you can see, I'm still fiddling. And, you know, you get to a point where you're done. You don't want to overwork it, but yeah. So I will complete this, and then I will make a card with it and put it on the blog. But hopefully you got, you got, you know, a good sort of idea of how this technique actually works. I may yet add some more darkness around here. I may not. It depends how it dries. Remember also, once it dries, at this point, as I said, I probably wouldn't dry it with the heat tool anymore, because I wouldn't want the embossing powder to remelt and go flat. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow I may look at it and add some more colour if I think it needs it. And then I will splatter some paint over it, either in gold or in blue. I would say probably in gold, but I don't know, I might do blue because that's, you know, opposite as well. So we'll we'll see how we go. I will finish this, and as I said, I'll post a card on the blog. So I hope you try this and have fun with it. Okay, that's it for now, and take care until next time.